In August 1931, Sir Hubert Wilkins, an experienced explorer, led an expedition aiming to reach the North Pole using the submarine Nautilus. This vessel would venture into the vast, frozen, and largely uncharted Arctic. Much of the Arctic world had yet to be fully explored. Aboard the submarine was a group of brave explorers determined to uncover the great mysteries of the Arctic. They wanted to reach the top of the world and discover what lay hidden beneath the ice. They pressed on for thousands of kilometers under the ice, despite enduring cramped conditions and piercing cold. However, as time passed, the expedition encountered various problems. For centuries, explorers had repeatedly attempted to reach the world's top. Initially, they used ships to battle the biting cold and slippery sea ice. Their ships often became trapped, leaving the crew with little hope of rescue. Later, explorers tried using dog sleds or walking, which frequently ended in tragedy. The challenges in the Arctic were so great that the first undisputed discovery of the North Pole only occurred in 1926. Even then, it was only from the air, using a modified airship that did not touch the ground. When experienced explorers like Sir George Hubert Wilkins planned to set foot on the North Pole, he believed there was a better way to do it. Wilkins would begin his journey in the summer. First, he would cross the Atlantic and then head towards the Arctic Circle. From there, his expedition would move west across more than 3,000 km over 6 weeks. He would dive under the ice and surface whenever there was a gap before finally arriving in Alaska. Wilkins used his savings and raised money from various sources to fund this expedition. He gave lectures day and night and even wrote a book detailing his ambitious plans. However, this was still not enough. He needed serious support. One way to get it was by turning his scientific expedition into a media sensation. A journey under the sea ice was sure to grab newspaper headlines. Thus, Wilkins struck a deal with newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst, a man skilled in creating sensational stories. Hearst would get exclusive publishing rights and Wilkins would get funding. To generate further excitement, Hearst arranged for Wilkins to meet a second expedition at the pole. The giant airship Graf Zeppelin would fly overhead as Wilkins emerged from the ice, dazzling the public with headlines about conquering the pole from above and below. If successful, Hearst would reward Wilkins with $150,000. All that remained was to find a suitable submarine for the expedition. Wilkins planned the journey to the North Pole using Nautilus, a World War I-era attack submarine that had been retired and extensively modified by renowned naval architect Simon Lake. This submarine had to do something that had never been done before. The journey was fraught with danger, including the risk of colliding with sea ice. To this end, Lake reinforced the bow of Nautilus with thick steel plates and concrete and added hydraulic shock absorbers to cushion ice impacts. The surface could also be deadly. Therefore, Lake equipped the top of Nautilus with a sled launcher, allowing the vessel to glide under the ice like a sled. Retractable hydraulic guide arms were also added to maintain a safe distance from overhead dangers. Nautilus could be trapped under the ice for days. Ultimately, the vessel needed to surface to take in air and recharge its batteries. The lack of gaps in the ice could endanger the crew, so Lake created a series of drills capable of penetrating ice up to 6 meters thick to reach the surface, in place of the original torpedo tubes. Lake added a pressurized diving chamber where the crew could lower instruments to the seabed or perform dives. Overall, Simon Lake made dozens of modifications. Originally built for World War I, Nautilus now had to battle the elements. On March 16, 1931, as the expedition prepared to depart, Wilkins exuded confidence to reporters. The crew was getting everything on the vessel ready for a final check before leaving the shipyard. "We hope within 6 or 8 months to have completed the 2,000-mile journey under the ice, departing from Spitsbergen around early July." However, deep down, Wilkins was worried. He feared many of the submarine's new features were unnecessary and could even be dangerous. He doubted the sled launcher, ice drills, and shock absorbers that he worried would become embedded in the ice, trapping Nautilus below the surface. Wilkins insisted on installing photosensitive electric cells to measure the thickness of the ice above so he would know where to surface, but Simon Lake refused the request. Nautilus was Lake's submarine. He leased it from the US Navy and had the final say on modifications. Regardless, Wilkins was only renting the submarine for the expedition, so there was little he could do but accept the submarine as it was. However, these sophisticated gadgets caused many problems even before the expedition began. The submarine had to return to port for repairs multiple times. Creating new features was one thing, but trying to install them on an old, worn-out submarine created various issues, confirming Wilkins' worst fears. The ice drills didn't even work during testing, and a separate engineering vendor was called in to try and fix them. Weeks turned into months, and Wilkins began to feel the pressure. If Nautilus was to meet Graf Zeppelin at the North Pole, time was of the essence. Otherwise, Wilkins would lose the prize money from Hearst. In June, Wilkins had had enough of the situation. Despite the mechanical issues being unresolved, he felt it was time to start the journey. The Atlantic crossing was harrowing. The small submarine was easily tossed about by the fierce storms of the North Atlantic. The crew began to realize just how uncomfortable Nautilus was. The submarine was cramped and claustrophobic from the start. Now, with the weight of the expedition, space was even tighter. For 20 crew members, there was only one toilet in the open between two noisy diesel engines. The crew had to spend the entire day standing as there were no seats. There were only a few bunks to be shared among the crew, which provided little relief. Wilkins sent daily radio updates to Hearst documenting the harrowing journey. This morning, a large wave swept the deck and carried away the sail to the front of the conning tower, he reported. Almost everyone on board was seasick. When Nautilus's ballast failed, dirty water, oil and vomit began to pool at the crew's feet. However, as the small submarine struggled against the fierce Atlantic, the situation worsened. Forced to shut down one of its two engines, Nautilus could only move slowly. On June 13th, a week into the journey, Nautilus stopped sending radio updates. For several days, no one knew the fate of the submarine and its crew. On June 15th, the battleship Wyoming found Nautilus adrift, about 1,000 km northeast of the Azores. Both engines were broken and the batteries were dead. Wilkins now had to face the harsh reality of having his vessel towed across the Atlantic. Worse still, 4 crew members quit and Nautilus once again needed major repairs. It would take weeks to get replacement parts from the United States. This meant there was no longer enough time to meet Graf Zeppelin, and in a shocking blow, Wilkins could no longer claim the prize money from Hearst. The media also turned against him, writing headlines openly mocking his expedition. Wilkins was under increasing pressure, his submarine was failing, his crew was demoralized, and winter was approaching. At this point, almost anyone would have given up, but not Sir Hubert Wilkins. Although Nautilus never reached its goal, the expedition still left an important legacy. The courage and determination of Sir Hubert Wilkins and his crew became an inspiration for future explorers and scientists. The Nautilus submarine became a symbol of human endeavor to uncover the mysteries of the universe and showed that even in the face of failure, the spirit of exploration never fades.